Have you ever wondered how you can have two children raised in the same household, raised by the same parents, go to the same church, go to Sunday school, go to the same grade school, high school, maybe even off to college, hear the same words of the Bible, but yet turn out so differently? One child goes this way, the other child goes that way, having heard the same thing. As a parent, that can be baffling. It can be hurtful. It can be frustrating. You look at the child that went wayward and you say, I did not raise him or her that way. Why are they doing those things? They weren't raised that way. And you look at your other child and you're pleased with what they're doing. They're on the right track. But the other one, the prodigal son, the wayward son, the prodigal daughter, the wayward daughter, has gone the wrong way, and it just baffles you. And you wonder, how could this happen? Well, I believe it happens in really two ways. Their relationship with God and the choices they make. Their relationship with God and the choices they make. In our lesson today, we're going to look at two brothers who have gone on separate paths, and we're going to look at their outcome and find out the real reason. The real reason. What their relationship with God and the choices they make. Stay tuned for this week's lesson. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be so interesting. Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. John W. Wilson III, bringing you the Sunday School lesson for the first Sunday in January 2022. Happy New Year. Thank you for joining me. This is a Sunday School lesson for Sunday, January 2nd, 2022. I'm excited about it. The name of the lesson is Justice, Vengeance, and Mercy. Justice, Vengeance, and Mercy. The passage that it will come from will be Genesis chapter 4, verses 1 through 15. This is an exciting lesson. This is a lesson that will touch us all. This is a heartbreaking lesson. This is a lesson that will show God's justice, vengeance, and mercy. But before we get started, I want to invite you to like, share, and subscribe this lesson. Share with many people as you believe that will benefit from this. If this lesson has been a blessing to you, like the button, share it, and subscribe. I would like this lesson again to reach as many people as possible. And if you like in this new year, I would like for you to leave a comment. Your comments just motivate me more to put out these lessons each and every week. I would just like to hear what you have to say. Just want to say hello? That is good. If you want to introduce yourself to me, that is fantastic. If you want to leave a comment about the lesson, hey, that's even better. Or if you want to share something, maybe I can improve. I would like that a lot. So let's get into our lesson. Exciting lesson. This is coming from the book of Genesis, the book of beginnings. And so let's see what God has to say. Let's go back in time to see what God has to say through Moses. So we know chapter 1 deals with the beginning of the earth, the heavens and the earth. It talks about how God created the heavens and earth in 7 days. God looked out and said it was good. God rested on the Sabbath. Chapter 2, we look at how God made Adam from the dust of the ground. Adam names all the animals. He begins to see that, hey, they all have their mate. They all have their female partner, but I'm left out. So God takes a rib from Adam, puts him to sleep, and he creates Eve. So we have that. Chapter 3, unfortunately, depicts the fall of man. Satan comes in the form of a serpent. He deceives Eve. She bites into the apple, to the forbidden fruit. Adam comes along, knows what's happened, knows that it's wrong. He is not deceived. He willfully with his own volition, bites into the forbidden fruit, and sin at that moment enters into the world. Everything is changed forever. Okay? Chapter 4, we come and we see the consequences of sin. Sin is having its way. Okay? And then we'll also see the first two children of Adam and Eve. And we'll see if sin has a consequence on them. We'll see how much sin has evolved into this world in such a short time. So let's get into chapter 4, verse 1. It says, now Adam knew Eve, had relations with Eve as a man and woman do, as a husband and wife, how they have sexual relations. So that's what the word knew means. And so it says, she conceived, meaning that she bore a child. She named that child Cain, saying, I have gotten a man with the help of the Lord. That I've gotten a man has been much of controversy between many scholars. Many, they just can't come to an agreement what that means. It could mean that this, and this is what I believe it means, she has a man that brings optimism into the world. And maybe this is the child or the man that will be the one that will bruise the head of the serpent and make things right again. That's what I believe it means. Some people believe that it's a rebellion against Adam because she's naming the child Cain, and usually the man names the child and not the woman. I don't think that's the case. I think that's reading into it too much. Adam could have easily told her, this is what we're going to name the child, and she could have repeated it. Or Adam could have let her just name the child. Could have been any kind of way. But I believe that it's optimistic. You can tell how this is. She says, I have gotten a man with the help of the Lord. She's giving God glory. There's no selfishness in part of it. She's happy just like any other mother that would have their first child. She's elated. She's gone through 9 months of pregnancy. Now she bore a child. She's elated. She's celebrating. I like the fact that she says, with the help of the Lord. She credits God in her bearing of this child, Cain. Okay? So verse 2 says, and again, she bore his brother Abel. Now, one thing, she has her second child, and it says she bore his brother Abel. Through this passage, you will see Abel referred to as the brother of Cain. 2 reasons, because one reason is that the focus of this passage, of this text, what we're studying today, is on Cain and not Abel. We are focusing on the dysfunctions and the evil nature of Cain, and Abel, although he has a short part, his work or his deeds or his faith speaks volumes for who he is. And we'll see that little needs to be said about Cain, much is to be said about, little needs to be said about Abel, and much needs to be said about Cain. So I believe that's why the reference is there. The emphasis is on Cain, not Abel, because Abel speaks, his life speaks for itself. It says, and again, she bore his brother Abel. Now Abel, look at the difference, okay? It's going to be a compare and contrast a little bit. Now Abel was a keeper of the sheep, okay? A noble profession, okay? He had livestock, he had sheep, he had this and that. He had domestic animals which he cared for, okay? Great profession. Cain was a worker of the ground, equally as great. He was an agriculture, meaning that he raised crops. He produced things from the ground. He loved farming and raising things, whereas Abel loved being with animals. A lot of people, scholars, want to depict that the raising of the sheep was something better than the agriculture because of the sacrifice being offered. That's not the case. God has given us different gifts. The gift that Abel had was working with the sheep. The gift that Cain has was working with the ground. Perfectly normal. Whatever your gift is just as valid as somebody else's gift. No one gift is better than another gift because it all comes from God. So if we knock down somebody else's gift, we're knocking down what God has given that person. So we see here, Abel was a keeper of the sheep. Cain was a worker of the ground. And this is important because it would indicate or dictate what type of offering or sacrifice they would give God. It says, in the course of time, and you remember during that time there, people lived a long time. They lived 700 years, 800 years, 900 years. That was very common in that particular time frame, because they weren't too far removed from the time of the Garden of Eden. Okay? So in the course of time, Cain brought the Lord an offering. So over a period of time, Cain was bringing offerings to God. Abel was bringing offerings to God. And this was and what I'm about to read was a typical result of Cain bringing his offering, Abel bringing his offering. Okay? In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground. Okay? In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering. Look at this, it says, an offering of the fruit of the ground. So he's bringing something from the ground, something he produced. And Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and their fat portions. See what it says here. Look at the key here. He brought an offering. Some versions said some offering. Okay? Meaning that it was just a hokey-dorky, no big deal offering to God. God, I'm going to bring your offering today, so I'm just going to grab something and bring it to you and hope that it pleases you. I really don't care if it pleases you. I'm just going to bring you something. So he brought an offering. Wasn't his best, his offering. Wasn't brought with the best attitude or anything like that. It was just something, Lord, I know I got to give you something. I'm just going to give you something. We know people like that. They just come to church. I'm just going to put in the least I can in the offering. I'm going to give God what is left over from what I have in the offering plate. I'm not going to give God my best. I'm not going to give where it hurts me a little bit. I'm not going to give to the point where it's a sacrifice. Lord, I'm just going to give you something. I'm going to save the best for me because I want it for me. So that's what his attitude was. I want to save the best for me. I just want to give God something. You know, I can paint a picture. He's going through the farmland. He sees a watermelon and he thumps on it. And boy, that sounds so good. That's going to be a good watermelon. He sets that aside, not for God, but for him. Thumps another one. Oh, that's not going to be a good one. God doesn't care. He doesn't eat watermelon. Why should I give him the best? So he gives the worst to him. I'm going to give him the worst watermelon, the worst cantaloupe, the worst greens, the worst corn. Because God doesn't eat all those things. He's God himself. He doesn't need that. And Cain is missing the point. The point is not whether God needs it or not. God is worthy of it. You honor God with your giving. What you give says a lot about your relationship with God. What you give says a lot about who you are. In this case here, Cain was a very selfish person. He wanted the best for himself and the mediocrity or mediocre for God. And maybe we can learn a lesson from that and see how God responds to that. So then we have here an Abel. Now this went on for a period of time. Some time had passed by. A course of time. Could have been years and years and years. Okay? And Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and their fat portions. Now look in comparison of what Abel bought. He brought the firstborn, meaning that whatever was firstborn, he gave to God before he took for himself. If there were a litter of sheep and it was 5, he made sure he took the firstborn and gave to God, and he had the remaining. Or if there was just 1 sheep born, he gave that 1 sheep to God. He had his priorities right. Whatever was first born, that was set aside for God. He put God first in his life. And I can imagine, I know God was pleased with that. We'll find out. Not only did he bring his firstborn, okay, of his flock, of his horse, his donkey, his cow, his sheep, whatever he had, whatever it was to be sacrificed. Not only did he bring his firstborn to God, he brought their fat portions. So when he bought the lamb or the sheep, he gave the fat portion was the best portion. It was the best tasting portion. It was the part that smelled the best. It was deemed the most sacred to God. Okay, so over a course of time, this is how his sacrifice looked. He brought his firstborn. Not only did he bring his firstborn, when he slaughtered the firstborn, he bought the best portions to give to God, and he took whatever was left over. Can you imagine that? What does that say about Cain? He loved the Lord. He knew where God was. He knew where he is. He feared the Lord. He respected and honored God. That's what it says about him. He loved the Lord. He had a relationship with God. He loved the Lord, and his giving indicated it. And you can tell that Cain, his relationship with God was struggling. It was hard. It wasn't fruitful. It was a grudgingly relationship. Abel did this in a happy way. He did it with a generous heart. He did it with a loving heart. He went around and said, God, I'm giving you the best, the first and the best of everything that I have. Let's see how God responded to that, okay? He goes right here. And the Lord had regard for Abel, meaning that he had regard. He was pleased with it. He liked what he saw. He valued the sacrifice the offering that Abel had. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering. Okay, and look right here. Okay, this is what I like. And the Lord had regard for Abel. Okay, his offering said a lot about Abel. Okay, our offering says a lot about ourselves. What we give to God says a lot about us. Okay, so a lot of people say, well, I can separate the two. No, you are not your offering, but your offering speaks to who you are as a person of God. Your offering speaks to your relationship with God. It speaks to who you are. Okay, and Abel's offering said a lot about who he was in relationship to God. God had a high regard of the offering that Abel gave to him, which meant that God was pleased with Abel himself. But for Cain, in contrast, in contradiction, but for Cain and his offering, look, for Cain and his offering, he had no regard, because his offering was an indication of how Cain's relationship was with God, which was not good. It was not pure. It was not right. It was not holy. Cain did not love God with all his heart, mind, soul, and body. He loved himself more. Okay? Abel loved God more than he loved himself. And his offering indicated. Cain loved himself more than he loved God, and his offering indicated. And so Cain thought maybe he can get away with something, giving God something less than, and he was wrong. Abel never crossed his mind. He wasn't trying to get away with something. He loved God so much, I'm going to give him the best. So we see an attitude problem. We see an attitude difference. We see a lifestyle difference. We see a different perspective on God. We see two different relationships with God as evidenced by their offering. Okay? I can't say enough how your offering gives an indication of what you think about God, or how you value God, or God's priority in your life. Okay? And so it doesn't matter that God is not looking whether it's an animal or some kind of coming from the ground or crop. God's not looking at that. He's looking at your heart when you give. Okay? That's what he's looking at. So if somebody can give $100, somebody can give $1,000. God's not looking at that. He's looking at the heart, the attitude. You remember in the New Testament when Jesus was observing a widow giving her 2 mites. That 2 mites said a lot more than anybody else that day that was giving out of their abundance. She gave out of her sacrifice. Okay? So we ought to remember that when we give each and every Sunday. Are we giving God our best? Are we giving God a sacrifice? Does it hurt a little bit? Do we have to think about what we give? Or do we just grab something, write a check, oh, we give God that, and not even think about, not even feel the sacrifice, because it's not a sacrifice. Okay? So let's see how both of them react. I'm sure God expressed to Abel that he was pleased with his offering. Okay? He could have blessed him more. He could have made it known to Abel in some kind of way that he was pleased with it. In some kind of way, Abel knew that God was pleased with it because he kept doing it over and over again, and it was an indication of his relationship. Okay? So let's look at this. So when Cain, he says here, in Cain's offering, God had no regard, meaning it wasn't acceptable. It was not pleasing. It wasn't valued. It wasn't a sacrifice, okay? It wasn't something worthy. It wasn't something God was really pleased with, okay? And Cain found out about it. God communicated that to him. And it says right here, so Cain was very angry. Okay? Cain was very, very angry. Okay? And his face fell. His countenance fell. He frowned. Okay? He pouted. He was angry. Have you ever seen a child be so mad at their parent? They just puffed up, their lips sticking out, they're frowning, they make the ugly face. They're unhappy with the consequence of the action. They're unhappy because they didn't get something they wanted. Cain thought he was going to get praise from God by giving some offering that he just grabbed up on the way to give to God. Didn't pick out the best to God. He thought he was going to get praise for that. And when he didn't get the praise or didn't get the regard or didn't get the acceptance or the approval, he was angry. And so instead of being angry at himself and saying, what could I have done better? What could I have done different? Or asking the question, why isn't God not pleased with what I've given him? He gets mad at God. Not only does he get mad at God, he gets very angry with God. Very angry that his whole face changes. He's puffed up, angry, frowning, just in a bad mood. And he's blaming God. Takes no responsibility, knowing that he did not give God his best and God is worthy of it. If he didn't know, he ought to look at the example that his younger brother Abel gave and God was pleased with and said this to myself, okay, he's not pleased with mine. I know he's pleased with Abel. Abel gave his best. He gave his firstborn, gave the best portions. Maybe I can do that and then God would be pleased with me. That Cain, the older brother, should have looked at the example of his younger brother and done the same, and he would have had the answer to his problem, and his face would not have fell, his countenance would not have fallen. That's where we are right now, okay? It says here, the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? Okay? God sees the anger on his face, which is a reflection of the anger and that's stirring in his heart. He said, and God comes to him in a calm way. God could have said, look, you mad at me? What? You're mad at me? You have no right to be mad at me. I'm going to do this. No, God is ministering to Cain. God is trying to reach to him, trying to speak to him. He's not forcing Cain to do right. He's trying to reason with Cain to do right. God is not going to force you and me to do right. He wants to reason with us, and he wants us doing right or giving an offering to him. He wants it to come from the heart. Okay? God is not going to force you to do something you don't want to do. Not going to force you to do it. If you don't want to have a relationship with him, God's not going to force it. If you don't want to tithe, God's not going to force it. There may be consequences, okay? But God's not going to force it. I'm sure here Abel was living a blessed life. Maybe he, by giving the right offering with the right attitude, the right heart, God was producing his livestock. His livestock was growing beyond belief. And Cain was seeing that. And Cain was giving just some crop, and he can see his crop not producing, not multiplying, or he can even see the work becoming harder and harder. So he's angry. But Cain, to me, is a narcissist. He just sees things his way, and he's going to blame everybody else, take no responsibility, and have no remorse for his actions. So God says, why are you angry, and why is your face fallen? Okay? God knows, but he's given a chance for Cain to confess and talk about it and be ministered to. Maybe if he has a dialogue with God and confess what he's angry about, maybe God can help him see another way. Okay? And this is what God says. If you do well, will you not be accepted? Look what he's saying here. If you do what is right, by giving me what is rightfully mine, or giving me the honor that I deserve, or giving an acceptable sacrifice, will you not be accepted? And what he's saying, and to me, is saying this. If you give an offering that is due God, which says a lot about the relationship you have with God, will you not be accepted? And the answer is yes. If you do what is right and give God what is rightfully his, put God first in your life, Put God above your needs. Give God a worthy sacrifice, and you give it from the heart. Yes, you will be accepted. Yes, your offering will be accepted. Okay? And look what he says here. And if you do not do well, if you don't want to do what is right, if you want to disobey God, dishonor God, if you want to continue to be selfish and narcissistic, thinking only about yourself, guess what? Sin is crouching at the door. He's standing right by the door, ready to come in. He's right there. He's crouching. He's lurking. He's like an animal, a lion or a tiger that's on the prowl for his prey. He's lurking and lurking, quietly, looking for an opportunity to pounce on his prey. He's lurking. He's sitting there waiting for action, waiting to be stirred up at the right time, for he can go and take over your life and cause problems in your life. He says sin is crouching. He's waiting. He's just waiting for an opportunity to launch out and take over the situation, to strike, to commit a sin. He's waiting. He's crouching at the door. And look what? Sin, its desire is for you. He's not just lurching to do something. He wants to rule you, take over you. He wants to make you sin. He said, but you must rule over it. Okay? Sin wants to conquer you, wants to destroy you. He wants to separate you from me. He wants to bring misery and pain into your life. But look what God says. But you must rule over it, meaning that you have a choice in the matter. A lot of times, Flip Wilson said, the devil made me do it. God is saying the devil doesn't make you do it. You make choices. What causes people to go astray? Look what's happening here. Their relationship with God and the choices they make. Cain is having a strained relationship with God, and he's about to make a terrible choice. God is trying to tell him, don't do it. Do what is right. This will go away. But if you don't do what is right, sin will come in and overrule your life and cause misery and pain and regret in your life. You have a choice. You may say, well, sometimes I feel like it. If you're a child of God and you're doing wrong, how many times have God given you the red flag? Don't do that. Don't do that. I'm telling you not to do that. The Bible talks about the Holy Spirit being grieved. That means that when those red flags come, you're suppressing it. You're knocking it down. I'm just going to do it anyway. Then the next time, I'm just going to do it anyway. You knock them down some more. You knock them down some more. And then you wonder why your life is in a mess because of the choices that you make. God is speaking to you, and it says you do well, or it says here, if you do well, will you not be accepted? And that's what God says to us all the time. When we're faced with temptation, God said, if you do well, you will have my blessings. If you do what is right, you will have my acceptance, my approval. Okay? But if you decide not to do what is well, if you don't do what is well, if you do what you want to do, if you give in to that temptation, this is what God says to us every time. Sin is crouching at the door, and there may be consequences of your actions that you can't even fathom. And that's what happened to Adam and Eve. The sin crouched at their door, and they ended up having consequences that was beyond their wildest imagination. And that's what's telling them. He's trying to say that, Cain, if you don't master over it, you're going to do something you're going to regret. You're going to do something you're going to regret. Okay? But he has a choice. Why does that child go wayward? Because they make bad choices willfully. Willfully. Not out of ignorance, because they know what they're doing is wrong. They may not understand the full effect of the consequences, but they know what they're doing is wrong. They make bad choices. Why is Abel's sacrifice better, his offering better? Because he makes right decisions. Why is he's acceptable to God, or he's held in high regard? Because he's making right decisions. And look what's happening here. I can tell you the picture of life. Abel strived his best to keep God's commandments, to obey God. Cain lived a life of rebellion and against God. I can tell you already, just by their offering of what type of life they were living. Okay? All right, let's see what else happens. So, you must rule over it. When we come, I'm saying it again, when we come in contact with a temptation to sin, you and I must rule over it. Let me share something with you. I was filling out a form today, and I needed all the answers to be in the negative. And I had some place to be, and I couldn't be there if I tested positive for COVID. This week I tested positive. And so it was going to keep me from going or participating in something that I did not want to do. I took another test and I came out negative, thank God. But on the form it asked me, have I tested positive? I wanted my best to say no, but I said I'm going to trust God and say yes. It asked me, have I been around somebody who's exposed? I wanted to say no, but I put yes. And I trusted God. I thought somehow if I would put no, it would somehow affect the result of the test. But I said to myself, God, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to let your will be done. If I'm not supposed to be at this place, then I'm not going to be there. But I'm not going to lie on this form. I'm not going to be tempted. I'm not going to give in. I'm not going to let sin that's crouching at the door have his way. I'm going to trust you. And when I did that, I trusted God all the way, had so much peace. And I'm so glad that I did that. Satan will come and attack you in many different ways, in ways seen and unseen. But I'm asking you, you must rule over it. You must do what is right. Having a temptation is not wrong, but letting that temptation bridge its way into sin, that's the problem. When it rules over you, that's when that temptation becomes sin. In God's eyes, it's a test. Okay? Today, I passed the test, thank God. But if I didn't pass the test, it would have led to a sin, and Satan would have had his way over my life. Okay? Verse 8, Cain spoke to Abel, his brother, and when they went into the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Cain is angry at God. He's jealous of his brother. Takes his anger at God and his jealousy of his brother, and he kills his younger brother. Kills his younger brother. Okay? Mad at his younger brother because God's pleased at him, when God could have equally been pleased with him. Okay? He killed him. Okay? He took him out in the field, killed him, left his body on the ground, blood everywhere. I would imagine that he walked him in there, bait him into the field. Okay? Cain was a shepherd. Cain brought him into his territory and went behind him and struck him dead. That's my sanctified imagination. And I also believe that Cain was a coward. He would not have done it face to face. He would not have wrestled with him. Took something, a rock or something, a tool, and hit him in the back of the head. I believe Cain was a coward, and I'll show you why. Because when he thought his life was being threatened, he cried bloody murder. That's too harsh. So that sounds to me like a coward. Then the Lord said to Cain, where is your Abel, your brother? First mistake he did not. Cain, the reason he's a rebellious person, he's narcissistic. He's if you look at 1 John 3:11, it talks about Cain being evil. He is evil because he did not fear God. Somehow he thought he was going to get away with it, thought that God wouldn't comment on it, thought that God wouldn't see it. He lived a life of not fearing God, of reckless and abandoned, not caring what other people thought. Okay? I'm going to read that to you. I want you to see 1 John. Okay. 1 John 3:11. For this is the message that you have heard from the beginning, that we should love one another. Verse 12. We should not be like Cain, who was of the devil. He was of the devil, was of the evil one, and murdered his brother. Why did he murder him? Because his own deeds were evil and his brothers were righteous. His own deeds were evil, and his brothers were righteous. Let's look at what the Bible says about Abel. By faith, Abel offered to God a more acceptable sacrifice than Cain, through which he was commended as righteous, God commending him by accepting his gifts, and through faith, though he died, he still speaks. Okay. Even though Abel is not mentioned a lot in here, we don't hear anything that he has said. His faith speaks volumes even from his death of what type of person he is. The deeds of Cain show us what type of person he was. He was attached to the evil one, a murderer. Okay? Cain spoke to his brother, and when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is Abel your brother?" Okay? Abel your brother. He said, "I do not know." He lied. I mean, he just straight out lied to God. As if God did, by him asking the question, already knew what the answer was. But he's a liar. He's evil. He has no regard for God, has no remorse for killing his brother. This is what type of person he was. This is how quickly sin entered into the world. Adam and Eve sinned, they dealt with their sin, but later we try to find out in chapter 4 how quickly sin has manifested in the world, and we are witnessing the first murder. Can you imagine how Adam and Eve felt? They have 2 children here. One kills the other one, and one's going to suffer great consequences. Adam and Eve are going to end up losing both of their children because of one's sin toward the righteous person. Okay? He says, "I don't know." Straight out lying to God. Am I my brother's keeper? Sarcastically puts it back on God. He is his brother's keeper. He's the older brother. He should be looking out for his younger brother. He is his brother's keeper. We are our brother's keeper. Some people believe that we're not, but yes, we are. Yes, we are. And the Lord said, what have you done? So the Lord says, I know what you've done. I'm giving you a chance to confess. I gave you a chance not to do that, to confess your jealousy and the hate that you had towards your brother, the amount of how you were upset with me, but you refused that, and that I told you sin was crouching at the door, ready to lurch out, and you gave in to that temptation willfully, without much of a fight at all, if any of a fight, and you killed your son. What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me on the ground. The voice, the justice that your brother's death deserves, of you murdering him, is crying out from the ground. The blood itself is crying out from the ground for me to do something, for justice. And now, it says, so I'm going to give you justice. I'm going to give you your punishment, your vengeance. And this is what he says, and now you are cursed from the ground, okay, which has opened his mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. Okay, you left your brother on the ground. He will be buried in the ground. His blood is spilled on the ground. And so now your punishment is that you are cursed from the ground that you like to work so much. He loved tilling the ground. He loved his job. He loved his gift. God says, I'm taking that away from you. You will no longer do that. The ground will no longer produce for you. You will no longer be a farmer, a tiller of the ground. That will not be your occupation. Okay? He says this. It says, when you work the ground, it shall no longer yield to you its strength. It's going to be even harder than it was before. It's going to be even harder for you. You shall be a fugitive, meaning that you're going to be banned from this community. You're going to be kicked out of my presence. You're going to be banished from everybody else. And a wanderer on the earth. You will be nomadic. You will never have a stable place to stay. You will be always moving from one place to place, trying to survive. Trying to survive. But you're going to be abandoned from my presence. You're going to be taken away from people. You will no longer till the ground. You may say that's not a harsh punishment, but it was harsh for him because he loved working that ground. So something that he once loved, he would no longer be able to do anymore. He will be banned from the presence of his mother and father. He will be banned from that community that he's in. So he'll be taken from there. He will be a wanderer, a nomadic person. Okay? And so he will be by himself, left alone. Okay? That's the punishment. And this is God's mercy. God could have struck him dead. God could have struck him dead, but he did not. Okay? Look what he says right here. And this is why I say he's a coward. Okay? In Adam, when he and Eve, when they got their punishment from God, they did not say a word. They took it. They took it. They did not rebel. They had a sense of understanding what they did was wrong. Cain does not have that. Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. He's alive. How can it be greater than he can bear? He's still alive. He killed his son. He killed his brother. He caused heartache to Adam and Eve, to the rest of the community, to the rest of his family. Because back then they all were interrelated. He caused heartache. And look, all he's worrying about himself. The punishment is greater than I can bear. He's not saying anything about his mother, his father, anybody else. It's better, worse than, it's greater than what I can bear. Behold, you have driven me today away from the ground, okay? And from your face I shall be hidden. I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on earth. And this is what he says, whoever finds me will kill me. He just killed somebody, now he's worrying about his life. Narcissistic, evil. All he's doing is thinking about himself. Adam and Eve have lost 2 sons. One to murder, and the other one's a murderer, and will be banished from them, probably never to be seen again. Okay? And all he's worrying about is himself. The punishment that, woe is me, woe is me. Whoever finds me will kill me. Maybe he deserves to be killed. Then the Lord said to him, not so. If anyone kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken upon him sevenfold. So here, he's going to protect him. Okay? And it's really twofold. God is having mercy on him, and God is stopping additional violence to be had on Cain. God doesn't want this to be a world of violence where people are taking vengeance into their own hands. The Bible says, vengeance is mine, says the Lord. So God is saying any vengeance that's going to take place, any punishment on Cain that's going to take place will be at my hand and not anyone else's. I will not have this world become a group of vigilantes, reckless and abandoned, killing people left and right. I'm the one who takes life. I'm the one who gives life. So he says here, vengeance shall be on him sevenfold, and the Lord put a mark on Cain, lest anyone found him should attack him. Where that mark was, I don't know what it is, or wherever it was, I have no idea. But when people saw it, they knew that it was God's mark, and they weren't to touch it. Maybe it was something internally. They just saw it and they recognized it. So whatever it was, Cain is protected, okay? Then the Bible says, then Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and settled on the land of Nod. Nod is a place called wandering. So the wanderer is standing on a place called wandering, okay, east of Eden, as far as way from God as he can go, east, okay? God is here. He's going that way. As far as he can get away from God, he's banished from the presence of God. What do we learn from this lesson? A lot. We learn from God. What I've learned is this. There are people out there that deserve strict punishment. There are times where we give them the strict punishment, and there are times where we bestow mercy on them. Mercy is not giving somebody what they deserve. I don't know why God had mercy on Cain, but he did. And so he's telling us every now and then we should have mercy on other people, no matter how great the crime, no matter what they've done to us. This tells me that before we sin, there's always a way out. There's always a choice to be made. I don't care what environment you came from. I don't care what community you live in or what neighborhood you live in. I don't care what has happened to you. You always have a choice to do what is right, to do what is pleasing in God. And if you choose to do what is not pleasing in God, that's the choice that you make, and you can't blame on anyone else. Yes, your surroundings or your environment may have something put that pressure on you, but you make that choice, and one day you'll stand before God and have to give an explanation or be held accountable for that choice that you make. What do we learn from this? Is the gravity of sin. Sin is just as real now as it was back then. A lot of people will say, gosh, this is the first child and he's already a murderer. That's how great sin's impact it is. That's how it is. It's great. It's quick and it's swift. It spread quickly on the first child that was born. That's how quick it was. And you'll look through the lineage of Cain, and you'll see nothing but pride, nothing but pride, nothing but evil, nothing but evil. Another child, Seth, will have to be born, and that will be a righteous line. But Cain's line will be forever marked by pride. And Cain's pride is something that you and I deal with. When we choose to do wrong and not obey God, especially when it's put in our face, it's an issue of pride. I care more about what I want to do than I care about what God wants me to do. I care about me more than I care about God. What do we learn from here? God deserves our best. Not only does he deserve our best in our offering, in our sacrifice, the first fruits, the fatty portions, he deserves our best in our lifestyle. If our lifestyle is right, if our lifestyle is pleasing to God, everything will flow from that. Everything will flow from that. What was the difference between Cain and Abel? One of attitude, their relationship with God, and the choices that they made. God is a God of justice. God is a God of vengeance. And God is a God of mercy. God wants justice to be done. He wants vengeance to himself. And God is a lover of mercy. Did Cain do anything to deserve it? No. It was freely given. And at times in our lives, there will be times where God wants us to show mercy. He wants us to show mercy. So I hope this lesson has been beneficial to you. I hope that it has helped you in some kind of way. I hope that it will give us an incentive to do what is right, to resist temptation, to be obedient to God, to follow God's commandments, to be righteous like Abel. We don't know anything about, never heard a word from his mouth, but his reputation, his faith speaks volumes on who he is. I want that for my life, and I know you want that for your life. I want no part of Cain's life for me. I'm going to pledge today, this new year that we're in, I'm going to resist temptation. I'm going to fight off temptation. And I'm going to do what is well, what is right, so my life can be acceptable to God. God bless you. Love you. Happy New Year. Have a great Sunday school. God bless you. I'll talk to you next week.